Hey everyone, and welcome to week 2 of EDU 504. I hope you found your first week's reading and assignments engaging. As we move forward, I want us to think about our role not just as dispensers of information, but as guides. As teachers, our metacognitive awareness of how discipline-specific identities inform the reading of complex texts can help students grow into these identities themselves. This level of access can provide a powerful lens for students seeking to read for individual comprehension. Before we dig into the week 2 readings, ask yourself a quick question. In what social groups do you consider yourself an insider? Do you possess an advanced knowledge of professional sports that you share with a set of friends? Do you have a group of friends that share a love of the Broadway stage? How about your teacher friends? Are these the same people? Do you have a language that you speak with teachers that people outside of the profession don't always understand? Chances are you participate in a number of distinct social groups that share common vernacular routines, background, and possibly even sometimes attire. You are an insider because you know the unspoken rules of the game. The insider status is what we often take for granted as adults, yet it is the very barrier our students face every period of the school day. Think about the mental shift you make when moving from a faculty meeting to a dinner with old college friends. You instinctively adjust your vocabulary, your posture, your shared references, and so much more. In this course, we're going to refer to this as metacognitive shifting. By becoming aware of your own ability to move between these social identities, you can better model that same flexibility for your students. We want them to realize that science literacy or historical literacy isn't an innate talent. It is a social identity they can learn to inhabit. Of course, there are social groups in which we are outsiders. For example, as an older adult, trying to have a conversation with a teenager about pop culture can be painfully awkward. Discussing current trends in music, fashion, gaming, and television programs requires a deep level of insider knowledge that the older generation may lack. For example, if you did not watch Game of Thrones from start to finish, there is little you can contribute in a conversation with Game of Thrones insiders. In this week's reading and assignments, you will learn how these distinct affinity groups, or as the researcher James Gee defines them, discourses, can have an impact on students' comprehension of disciplinary specific text. This is a crucial pivot. We're moving from learning to read to reading to be. When Gee talks about big D discourse, he means more than just language. He means identity kit. That includes the right way to act, think, and value within a specific group. As you dive into the professional article for your summary this week, pay close attention to how Gee distinguishes between primary and secondary discourses. Our students come to us with the primary discourse, the language and identity from their home life. But the school environment demands secondary discourses that may feel alien to them. If a student feels that big D discourse of a chemistry lab conflicts with their primary identity, they will naturally resist the text. Our job is to bridge the gap, showing them that acquiring a secondary discourse is a form of empowerment, not a replacement of who they are. Disciplinary texts are almost always written by insiders who assume a base level of knowledge among student readers. However, for our students, this prior knowledge may be sketchy or absent, making comprehension difficult. As Buell notes, each text assumes a discrete reservoir of disciplinary knowledge and asks students to gain insights about some facet of their lives through a unique disciplinary perspective. The authors of these texts approach their subjects as experts in the field, a professional discourse. Their writing mirrors not only their well-developed prior knowledge base, but also the habits of mind that distinguish insider thinking in their discipline. Therefore, it is necessary for the teacher to help students move from outsider to insider status when engaging with complex texts. This means we must teach comprehension strategies in our classes just as intentionally as we teach content. This insider thinking is what makes a historian look at a primary source document differently than a casual reader would. A historian is looking for a subtext, a bias, a corroboration. This is their habit of mind. When we hand a student a complex text without teaching these specific habits, we're essentially asking them to navigate a dark room without a flashlight. This week, start looking at your own curricular materials through this specific lens. What is the expert author assuming the student already knows? Identifying these assumptions is the first step in creating insider access for your learners. While every subject has its own distinct discourse, teaching students how to read complex texts in a discourse-specific manner will aid comprehension. Comprehension, after all, is the goal of all reading, but often requires extra support. Aiding students in the use of comprehension processes helps them move beyond doing reading to engaging with reading. The challenge for middle and high school instructors is to create instruction that requires students to engage in the use of relevant elements of the comprehension process. You'll explore this a little bit more in your discussion board, which your initial post is due Thursday, March 19th. You will tackle Buell's characteristics of complex text relationships, richness of detail, structure, style, vocabulary density, and purpose. Ask yourself, which of these are most challenging for your students to navigate? Engagement is the bridge between small d, the words, and big D, the identity. If a student is merely doing the reading, scanning for answers to fill out a worksheet, they aren't actually entering the discourse. Real engagement happens when a student uses the text to solve a problem or take a stand, just as an insider in the field would. In your discussion post this week, I want to be specific. How can you transform a passive reading task into an active insider experience in your specific classroom? What kind of support does a student need to stop seeing a text as a barrier and start seeing it as a tool? One of the most common debates in secondary education is the strategy versus content divide. Many teachers feel that if they take time to teach reading strategies, they are losing valuable time for their content. However, as we explore discourse, we see that strategy is content. You can't truly master the content of a discipline if you cannot navigate the texts that contain the content. When we teach a student how to interpret a lab report or mathematical proof, we aren't just teaching reading, we are teaching them how to think like a scientist or a mathematician. Moving from being a content dispenser to a literacy guide requires a shift in how we view our daily lessons. If we only focus on content, we are essentially leaving students at the door of the discourse, hoping they can find their own way in. By integrating strategies such as annotating for author intent or analyzing vocabulary density, we provide the scaffolding necessary for them to walk through the door. Remember, the goal is not to turn every teacher into a reading specialist, but to make every teacher an expert at decoding the specific big D discourse of their own field for their students. To keep us on track, let's look at the full list of everything you need to consume and complete during this module. You will read chapter 2 of the Buell text. You'll read the Big D, Small d Discourse Explained passage. You'll read the professional article. You're going to view the GE Principle 3 on identity. You're going to view this lecture. You're going to complete your chapter 2 reading check. You're going to complete your week 2 discussion board, and your initial post is due on Thursday with 3 peer responses due by Saturday. And then you're going to do your professional article summary. I hope you have a great week. Feel free to send me an email if you have any questions.